Chase, always good to talk to you. And one of the stories of the day is all this talk surrounding Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy's contract. There's a lot of people weighing in. Mike Florio was the latest, and we'll share the screen and we'll let people hear what Florio had to say with Michael Hawley. Hawley's covers the Patriots out of New England. And here they are talking about Mac Jones and Brock Purdy. Here we go.
Mac Jones has to be thrilled more than anything else because Robert Saleh is not the offensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. He lived through that.
That's right.
After Josh McDaniels left to be the coach of the Raiders, Matt Patricia took over the offense, and just as foolishly and just as tragically for the Patriots that year, Joe Judge was in charge of the quarterbacks. Look, Mac Jones, I've heard enough about Mac Jones over the years, and I've seen enough from Mac Jones. He is not going to show up and bow down to Brock Purdy. He's going to go in there with the mindset of, I can win this job. I was the 15th pick in the draft in 22. This guy was the last guy taken in 23. This guy, right place at the right time, running Kyle Shanahan's offense. That's all you have to do. You listen to Kyle. You do what Kyle wants, and you're going to play well. And, Jimmy Garoppolo had limitations. Trey Lance never really worked out. Brock Purdy was the guy who kind of just slipped in the back door at a time when they were trying to figure out what the hell they were going to do with Trey Lance. I can do this. I can be that good. I can be better. That's going to be Mac Jones' attitude. He's going to go in there, regardless of whether or not it works.
Yeah.
But he's going in there not with the idea that I support Brock Purdy. No, I'm trying to beat Brock Purdy out, and I want to give the 49ers something to think about. And that's another reason for them to not show up with $60 million per year in new money average for Brock Purdy to get his deal done. Let's see what we got in Mac Jones before we do a long-term commitment with Brock Purdy.
Let me see if I can say it this way without calling anybody out in particular. But those who know will know. I remember I used to do talk radio. I did sports talk radio for 13 years in Boston. So we had a partner. It was great. And that partner moved on. I had to break in another partner. And there are certain people who, when they're not on the air and you talk to them, you really like them. They really make a lot of sense. But then when the red light comes on, you think, oh my God, this is awful. I like this person, but I don't like being on the air with this person. And so I think that's what Kyle Shanahan is going to find with Mac Jones. Mac Jones, if you talk football with Mac Jones, you love it. He understands, even before he was drafted. I don't know if you remember this, Mike, when that speculation that you mentioned earlier about, hey, Kyle Shanahan, they have the third pick in the draft. Will they draft Mac Jones? And Mac Jones is asked about it, and he gives this great, eloquent breakdown of the San Francisco offense. This is before he was even drafted. It was very impressive. So he is an impressive football mind when he's talking, but when he plays, it's not pretty. He just does things that are just head-scratching, and he will drive Kyle Shanahan crazy. He will make him crazy. So he's not going to beat out Brock Purdy. If he does beat out Brock Purdy, it's going to be for a game or two, and then Purdy will go right back in there and take the job back because he's just not capable of – I don't think he's capable of maintaining it at a starter's level. He's a cameo guy, but I don't think he's a starter anymore.
Interesting. What do you think, Chase, as far as I haven't talked to you about Mac Jones. What do you think of the Mac Jones addition? Do you look at it as a guy who potentially can be a starter? Is it a leverage play against the Purdy contract? Do you think Purdy and Jones coexist peacefully? How do you see the whole addition of Mac Jones?
So much to take away from what they just discussed, and Mike Florio actually got it wrong. Mac Jones was taken in 2021. That was the same draft class as Trey Lance, and then Brock Purdy was taken that following year in the 2022 NFL draft when he famously was made Mr. Irrelevant. And imagine where the Niners would be if it weren't for San Francisco taking Purdy with the final pick of that draft when Brian Greasy, who's no longer with this coaching staff, was pounding the table saying, I think we should take this guy. And it's really helped to save this Niners organization, which brings us now to present day, because Purdy since then, in taking over for Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance as a rookie, what he did in 2023 when he was tremendous, so efficient to a historic level, helped lead this team to a Super Bowl, was top 5 in MVP voting. And then last year, it was a little bit rocky, but the entire season for San Francisco is rocky, is now at a point where he's been a great bargain deal. He's made less than $1 million every single season that he's been in the NFL, set to make $5 million in the final year of his rookie contract. And he's looking for this new deal, which is one of the biggest storylines in recent memory for the Niners, considering the importance of the position, and one of the biggest storylines across the NFL, which is why somebody with a national platform like Mike Florio is talking about it. As far as Mac Jones goes, I like the Niners bringing in Mac Jones. It puts a little bit of pressure on Purdy coming off a down year. It gives them quarterback insurance because Purdy has been injured in his own right to start his career with the elbow surgery and the shoulder injury last year. Coming off of 2024, you're a little bit uneasy if you're thinking about giving Purdy $50 to $60 million, because you know if he occupies 20 to 25% of the salary cap, that's a lot. And Purdy is proven to be a quarterback who I think needs good players around him. You also don't have a backup quarterback for Purdy. Brandon Allen, not good enough to be in this league. Josh Dobbs, the Niners messed up that situation. He goes to the New England Patriots to back up Drake May. And so I think that Mac Jones is a high-level backup who Kyle Shanahan really likes. He fell in love with him in the pre-draft process. He has not had an ideal start to his career as far as having a foundational base beneath him, as far as having organizational and offensive stability. He has never had good skill level talent around him. The offensive coaching has never been good enough. Matt Patricia was his offensive coordinator, as Mike Florio said, and the one good year that Mac Jones had, he was a Pro Bowler, and he was one of the top rookies among all rookies in that draft class. Since then, he has not played well, but Mac Jones is a player who has some fire. He's very competitive. And because of that, he rubs some people the wrong way. I think that's a good influence on Purdy. And I think that Mac Jones looks at coming to the Niners as an opportunity to really resurrect his career and get back on track the way that Sam Darnold did. But he looks at this Niners situation saying, look at what Kyle Shanahan did with Nick Mullins. Look at what Kyle Shanahan did with C.J. Beathard. Look at what Kyle Shanahan's been able to do with Brock Purdy. And I know that some people will mock Mac Jones, but he is a smart and heady football player. Nick Saban has talked about that. Bill Belichick took him in the first round, midway through that first round. Kyle Shanahan really liked him. I think it's pretty telling that a lot of upper echelon, top tier football minds like him a lot. And when he was at Alabama, I know that team was loaded in 2020. He threw 41 touchdowns and 4 picks that year and led college football in a lot of different categories. So do I think that Mac Jones is being brought to San Francisco to compete with Brock Purdy to be the team's starting quarterback? No, but it's always good to bring competition in that room because competition brings the best out of everybody. Brock Purdy, Larry, said himself in front of you and others, I need to get back to playing with that chip on my shoulder. I didn't do that in 2024. And so he has a lot to prove. Mac Jones can help him do that. It's good quarterback insurance. And I'm always a fan of bringing in a backup who has pedigree, who has some potential in a good situation on a 2-year deal to potentially see what he can become down the road.
I like it for a lot of the same reasons. I do think Brock Purdy has to continue to be challenged. I mean, they didn't challenge him last year. They just basically said, you're the quarterback. Here are these 2 other backups, but they're true backups. Nobody, the year before, at least there was Sam Darnold there. The year before that, you had Jimmy Garoppolo, you had Trey Lance, you had guys to compete with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's a great competitor. To me, if there's one trait that stands out above all other traits when it comes to him, it's just that he is a competitor. And you're doing him a disservice if you don't put a competitive situation together. I like the idea of Mac Jones being there because I like the idea of somebody there who could actually do the job at a higher level than Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. Somebody there who could actually potentially win some games if Brock Purdy was gone for a month or two. And I just think that you're going to get, if you want the best out of anybody and you're not getting it, bring in competition.
Yep.
You know, I don't care what business you're talking about. Heck, Steve Young hated Joe Montana. Joe Montana hated Steve Young. They actually got along, but they hated that they had to deal with one another. It made them both better. Joe had a whole nother chapter to his career. Steve Young became this Hall of Famer, MVP of the league, because of the presence of the other guy, because you had to either perform or you weren't going to be playing. And I think the Niners need to get that back to that with Brock Purdy. Get somebody else in the room that can do the job. And so I love the idea of Mac Jones. And I agree that Mac Jones isn't going to come there to be the backup, that he's going to compete and want to play. And I think that's good. Iron sharpens iron. I really believe in that. What do you think of the other story this morning? There was another one going around from Mike Garafolo saying that, you know, it sounds like Mike Garafolo has talked to Kyle Strongin. That's what it sounds like to me.
That's
it sounds
exactly
like
what my takeaway was.
Yeah, that you know, because I've talked to Kyle and you know, he's maintaining that Brock deserves top of the market type money, and I understand why he's saying that. I don't think the 49ers can just say, you know what, we don't like the market, so we're going to pretend it doesn't exist. I don't think that game plan is going to work. So Garafolo is like, hey, I don't think this Purdy deal is getting done unless the Niners can agree on a number that's pretty damn close to what Dak Prescott's getting.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the 49ers want to get quite a bit beneath that, and they're talking about, we're going to be ruthless in these negotiations. Well, you can ruthless your way right out of any kind of chance to compete this year. I mean, I think there's a hard deadline on this thing, and I think it's the mini camp after the draft, which is going to be here in the blink of an eye. That May mini camp, if he's not there for the May mini camp, I think you're going forward at a major disadvantage, and the Niners are going to be challenged enough this year because of all the turnover and all the youth on their roster. They're literally shooting themselves and their chances of having any success this year in the foot if they can't get this thing done by that mini camp in May. How do you see the timeline of the negotiations?
Well, the worst place that you can be in the NFL is in quarterback purgatory, and it's so important for San Francisco, I think, to get this Brock Purdy deal done so that you have a clear vision for 2025. And we saw in 2024 how these types of contract negotiations negatively impacted the 49ers. It started with Christian McCaffrey, then it translated to Brandon Ayuk, and then it went to Trent Williams. And there was a weird vibe around this team throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, and then from the start of the season until the end of it, this is an offense that never found a rhythm. This is an offense that never found an identity. This is an entire team that never found a groove. And I know Kyle Juszczyk laughed about it prior to the year. There's been all this talk about weird vibes around our team. We don't sense that at all. Well, then we saw the season transpire, and that's exactly what happened. And if you don't get this deal done with Brock Purdy and he misses out of mandatory minicamp and he doesn't attend training camp, and then in the preseason and in training camp, you're stuck with Mac Jones and Tanner Mordecai as your 1-2 punch at quarterback, I think that's a problem. This team is clearly at its best with Brock Purdy, and we've seen that when this team is healthy, we've seen that when this team coaches up to their level, we've seen when this team plays up to their level. And I know a lot of players have left. This is one of the top teams in the NFL, and they still have a lot of talent going into 2025. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Diamador Lenore, Malik Mustafa, I think, is a rising stud. And so there's pressure on the Niners to get this deal done. They have a little bit of leverage here because they can say, look, we're going to give you this number. If you don't want to accept it, then we'll put the franchise tag on you after 2025. Brock Purdy can say, I'm holding out. Now, I don't think that Brock Purdy gains a lot from that because I think Purdy will want to show his value. And if he plays well in 2025 with lesser parts on offense, then he has the possibility and the potential to really earn more money. But here's the other issue that the Niners are in, right? They're saying, we're going to be ruthless in these negotiations. Well, you tried that with Brandon Ayuk. You got pantsed. You tried that with Nick Bosa. You folded and gave him $34 million. You tried that with Deebo Samuel, and you paid him. And with where the quarterback market is right now, the going rate for a good to really good quarterback is $50+ million per year. So while it's best for the Niners to sign Brock Purdy to $45 million per year so that you can spread that money elsewhere to improve your football team, I don't think it's realistic. And I don't think that Brock Purdy's ever going to take that number, because when you think about the top 10 highest paid quarterbacks per year, Dak Prescott at $60 million. I'd rather take Brock Purdy. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. Obviously, I'd rather take those two quarterbacks. But who would you rather have, Brock Purdy or Jordan Love? Well, Jordan Love's making $55 million. Who would you rather have, Brock Purdy or Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence is making $55 million. Tua Tagovailoa or Brock Purdy? Brock Purdy, it's not even close. Tua's making $53. Jared Goff. Brock Purdy, he might be better than Jared Goff. He's certainly more mobile. Jared Goff doesn't have a bazooka for an arm. How's he going to play without Ben Johnson? Well, he's making $53. Justin Herbert has never won a playoff game. He's at 52.5. Lamar Jackson at 52. Jalen Hurts at 51. Kyler Murray's at 46. Already, I'd rather have Brock Purdy than Kyler Murray. And so the starting point, I think, is about $50 million. But then Purdy and Kyle Strongton can say, well, look at what those aforementioned quarterbacks are making. Goff, Tua, Lawrence, Love, Dak, and Purdy's beaten a lot of them head-to-head in the playoffs.
Right. So, I memean, and then you're looking at it from the Niner perspective. Let's go through their options. Their options are they can do nothing, never call Kyle Strongton back and say, Brock, you're going to play this year at $5.2 million, and then go that franchise route next year and then and a next year after that. So technically, they don't have to do anything. They could let the thing just kind of ride.
Yeah.
Then they could come to some kind of an agreement on a contract, or they can go in a different direction, right? I mean, Craig Carton proposed the idea, and of course he's there in New York, so everything's New York centric, but he's proposing the idea of the Niners trading Brock Purdy to the New York Giants for what he's saying 3 first-round picks, including a pick swap this year where the Niners would get the 3rd pick overall and the Giants would get the 11th pick. And then he says the Niners should go sign Aaron Rodgers and then draft a rookie quarterback. I mean, what do you think of the viability of that? I mean, that would be a unbelievable happening if that happened. If the quarterback that they've been all in on, they somehow in the 11th hour, when it's time to pay the guy, abort the mission and send him to the New York Giants and move from 11 to 3 and get a couple other number ones. I mean, I'll say this, the trade price is pretty intriguing.
Yeah.
You're getting 2 number ones and you're moving from 11 to 3 for Brock Purdy, but you still don't have a quarterback unless you believe Mac Jones can be your quarterback.
Right.
How I guess the question is how risky do the Niners want to be? How tied to their price are they? Are they so tied to their price that they would pawn Brock Purdy at 25 for draft choices? Do you think they should consider it if they're at an impasse financially?
I think they should consider it if it was a better quarterback class, but I don't like this quarterback class at all. Yeah. And so if they've said all along, Brock Purdy's our guy. We love Brock Purdy. He's our franchise quarterback. We want to pay him. Jed York, the owner, even said, we're going to take care of Brock Purdy. And then they pivot off of that at the last hour. To me, that would reek of an organization with no plan. That would reek of an organization that is dysfunctional. It would reek of an organization that all of a sudden, after spending $300 million in 2024 coming off that Super Bowl loss, has all of a sudden gotten cheap overnight, which would be very puzzling to me. So if the quarterback class in this draft class was better, then I would think about it if you wanted to fully tear it down and rebuild, because that's what that would signal, right? You tear it down, you rebuild, you get a rookie quarterback who's now under team control for the next 5 years at an affordable price if you exercise that 5th-year option. And if you take a quarterback who you don't think is ready to play right away, you know that you have Mac Jones on this team for the next 2 years, and he can at least be the bridge quarterback, the holdover plan. Maybe Kyle Shanahan takes the guy who he loved in 2021, who he thought about taking with the number 3 overall pick, and then he turns Mac Jones into a really good player. But if they were to trade away Brock Purdy, I think this organization should be and would be looked at as a joke, because you can't say all of these things and then act a different way and just change your strategy, where you go from spending a lot of money to now all of a sudden saying, we don't want to spend any money. Oh my gosh, let's trade him away. And then you're back in quarterback purgatory. It's just not a good plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I know. But it's a matter of how do they feel about paying Brock Purdy the market value, because I think the agent's going to hang with that. I think, market value is I would say market value is minimum 55 million. And it's don't even bother offering anything under 55 million. Because he's the latest quarterback, because you just stated all those other quarterbacks who don't have his resume, who make north of 50 million. And I just think 55, 56 million, it's got to be there. It could be, it doesn't have to be 65 or 70 or some new standard, new high, but it has to be in line with the market. You can't be so disconnected that the market doesn't apply to us. Well, you know what? That's not the way it works. There's also been some indication that maybe from at least people whispering that there are people in league circles that believe the Niners can get 2 first-round picks for Brock Purdy. And the Niners plan this entire offseason is to pay Brock Purdy. But if there's interested team, but it sounds like there will be interested teams if he indeed becomes available. I mean, I don't know. This is a tough one. What do you think? You mentioned this is not a good quarterback class. Let's talk about this quarterback class for a second. Is there anybody in this quarterback class that you do like? Because, just because there's not premier guys at the top doesn't, kind of history has told us that, heck, there were 5 premier guys in 2021 and none of them wind up being any good.
Yep.
And then, you look at some other years and there's been, other years where guys have come of age. There's Cam Ward, there's Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. A lot of talk that the Jets are going to take Jackson Dart 7th in the top 10. Jalen Milroe, Chase, ran 4.37 yesterday in Tuscaloosa at the Alabama Pro Day. Even though he looked like a circus at the Senior Bowl, there's people that are like, hey man, if the Titans pass on Jalen Milroe, they're going to regret it. And if Milroe gets with a good organization, he's going to be, the next Jalen Hurts. He's going to be the next this, the next that. So then there's Quinn Ewers, there's Will Howard, there's Tyler Shugg, there's, been in college for 20 years, Dylan Gabriel, there's Kyle McCord. I like the guys I like. I like Riley Leonard from Notre Dame, and I like Brady Cook from Missouri, and I kind of like this kid from Canada, El Gersma, based on what I've seen. But I can acknowledge it's not a great quarterback draft for sure. But then there's also, you got Mac Jones, who's whatever. He's not old. He's relatively young. So I don't know. I mean, is there any mindset that you would be like, you know what? This Purdy's agent comes to you and he says, you know what, we're not taking anything. We want to be sitting between 60 and 65. And if you're just morally opposed to that, do you trade him for a couple ones? Take this year to take your lumps with Mac Jones, draft a Riley Leonard in the 4th round and go that route. I mean, it would be a dramatic shift, but you're back to having, inexpensive quarterbacks and a quarterback on a rookie deal. What do you think?
Yeah, as far as this quarterback class goes, I think this is a good way to judge it, right? The top 3, probably Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. I know Tyler Shugg is kind of climbing up draft boards, and the likes of Greg Cosell, they really like him, and I trust Cosell's mind as good as anybody. But for Ward, Sanders, and Dart, where would they go in last year's quarterback class? They're not going ahead of Caleb Williams. They're not going ahead of Jaden Daniels. They're not going ahead of Drake May. and JJ McCarthy might go ahead of those quarterbacks. And so it's pretty telling how thin and weak this quarterback class is. As far as Cam Ward goes, I think he's an absolute gamer. I think he has the clutch gene. I think he has the ability to lead. He can make throws in the pocket, but also extend plays out of structure. That defense for Miami last year was a joke, and he had to lead Miami to so many heroic comebacks, and he was able to do that and make big-time throws in the process. I like his arm. It's live. I like his athleticism. For Shedeur Sanders, he's more of a limited athlete. He's not a runner. He's a little bit thin. He doesn't have a bazooka for an arm, but he does throw with really good touch, timing, accuracy, anticipation. I think that he processes well. I like his ability to throw against pressure. Last year, he completed nearly 55% of his throws against pressure with 12 touchdowns, 5 picks. And so that's quick decision-making, diagnosing what the defense is doing, and then being able to make quick decisions and get the ball in the right place. For Jackson Dart, I think he's a really good athlete. His game reminds me a little bit of Jalen Hurts. He even said he models his game after Jalen Hurts when I was at the NFL Combine. I heard that, and I was like, that's pretty interesting. He has a really live arm. He can run. I think he's underrated with going through his progressions, but I think he needs some time. And so he could be available to the Niners at number 11, and maybe you go Mac Jones and then Jackson Dart. Honestly, where I think the good value is, you sign Mac Jones, if you sign Brock Purdy to a maybe short-term contract while giving him $55 million per year, I think the best value is a Kyle McCord or a Will Howard day 2, day 3. And I think that they can be really good quarterbacks in this league under Kyle Shanahan because they're smart. There's a good body of work. With Riley Leonard, I worry he's a good athlete, but he didn't throw at all for Notre Dame. And I'm just not sure that he can make throws consistently. And so huge risk to trade away Brock Purdy if you are truly convinced as an organization that he's not worth $55 to $60 million, then yeah, try to trade him away and rebuild that quarterback room. And that would signal a full-on rebuild for San Francisco, but it also just goes against everything that they have said as an organization. So if they did that, I would be absolutely shocked if they went in that direction.
I would too. Because they're so wed to Purdy, but they're also so militant about this. We're going to get our price. We're not going to be taken. We're going to be ruthless. This is a new era of negotiation, and the timing could not be worse because, I mean, you literally – your chances of winning this year are not great anyway, but your chances of winning are really bad if Brock Purdy doesn't show up until training camp or preseason or God forbid after that.